welcome to More Up North. I'm Shannyn Moore, and we're here live at the Taproot getting ready for a great show tonight. It's been kind of a big week for elections. A lot of crazy things happen in a crazy good way. And we're going to have Vince Beltrami coming in. He's the president of the AFL-CIO and for Alaska, and talk about labor and some of the issues that face a lot of Alaskans and our jobs, which we all enjoy. We also have a great panel lined up. It's going to be unbelievable. Scott Heyworth is here. Malcolm Roberts is here, and the legendary Steve Heimel, who just passed 50 years of being in broadcasting. So I'm so thrilled that all three of them are going to be here and taking questions from our audience. So you're going to want to pay attention. This is about Alaska, and we'll be back with More Up North.
Thank you.
Welcome back to More Up North. I'm so pleased for our interview tonight. He's the president of Alaska AFL-CIO. Please welcome my good friend, Vince Beltrami.
Thank you.
This is so weird because this is our third season, and you've been on multiple times on the panel, which is always nice for you to have, arguments with people other than me.
Right.
But I thought it'd be nice for people to see maybe us, argue with just each other.
Sure. We don't do that
So,
enough.
who is the best trout fisherman right now on people's television screens? That would be
me.
Me.
Oh. I'll give it to you. You had a good season.
Heck yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Heck yeah, I had a good season. You betcha. God, who talks like this? You know who. I'm so glad you came in because this week it's been pretty amazing to watch sort of how the country's going, the occupation of Wall Street. I certainly have spent some time with you and the brothers and sisters in the union, whether it be protesting against the Hilton and the Sheraton for unfair labor practices, showing up for working men and women in our town. And I've gone and walked with you guys. I'm not a union member. I wish I was. If you have one I can join and do this show, I'll do it. But this movement's been sort of slow building, and then we saw Wisconsin have a huge kickback against Governor Walker. John Kasich in Ohio tried to throw out collective bargaining. We have a mayor who apparently hates firemen and teachers, and so we've seen this movement coming across the country of anti-union. You're the president of the AFL-CIO. You've seen it. You're more aware of it. But we're starting to see a shove back, and not just from unions, but from, just everyday girls from Homer like me.
Well, and that's where it has to come from. I mean, actually, I was thinking about this, and I think the best thing that happened was the November 2010 elections, where, oddly enough, at least in some of these states where the legislatures got taken over by extremely conservative folks who then, after these people were elected, whether it was Walker in his legislature or Kasich in his legislature, where they were like, okay, now we have to pay back our benefactors, the people that got us into office.
Koch brothers.
And they essentially completely overreached. And they went to a point where, what I've been saying all along, the battles and what you're seeing the people in Occupy Wall Street, get upset about, these are battles that the unions have been carrying on for 30 to 40 years. But in that period of time, there's a generation that's grown up without seeing much of unions. It used to be that everybody had somebody in their family or someone they knew who was in the union. Well, these pressures of the last 30 and 40 years, all designed by people like the Koch brothers and big corporate America that's been trying to squish unions, have done a good job in suppressing that. Our numbers have gone down. And now, all of a sudden, that overreach has translated to where I feel like all of a sudden the cavalry's shown up. And everyday average people who aren't in unions, and actually even some of our members who thought that they could vote against their own pocketbook interests year in and year out and there would be no consequences, have all of a sudden come to this realization that, hey, wait a minute. We're not going to let these people take our country from us. And this is, to me, you're seeing everyday people who understand a lot of the struggles that we've been talking about. And it's when people outside of the unions start to relate to those struggles that they combine with the folks in the unions. And I think this big pushback, and you saw it in Ohio. They overwhelmingly voted for, I don't know what he got elected by, Kasich, as governor.
Not as many as voted to have collective bargaining in the public unions.
But, yeah, close to 2 to 1 voters came out and said, no, Kasich, that is not what we elected you for.
Well, I think there's really, and I know you're Catholic and you have your views. I know a lot of people who consider themselves pretty religious have had these certain views. And, it's like for a while you could have, okay, no gay marriage, women's rights, all this stuff in this hand. And that was like, people were like, okay, this is the hand they're voting with on that. And then in this hand, they're like, wait, no increase to minimum wage?
Wait a minute. They're trying to take away all our benefits, working conditions,
no health care
wages?
benefits? Like, really? Who cares? Next. And I think people are finally making that transfer. It's like, I'm sorry, if the queer can get married or not, I don't care. I want health care.
Right. Absolutely.
Like, I really, seriously, like, the things that are really important, living wages, and we've seen, I think, too, for the last 30 years, a particular political stripe talk about the family morals and the family values, and that this was all that important. I'm like, man, my family values are making sure people are healthy, making sure people can pay, you know, for a place to live.
It's hard to have values if you can't put food on the table, if you can't provide for medical coverage, if you can't do all those things. So a good job is, I mean, that's where we stand. As unions, we advocate, like I said, I'm born and raised a Catholic, and there's a lot of, but I
Were
think—
you born a Catholic?
Well, pretty quick, yeah, pretty soon after.
How long does it take?
There's like this little thing that happens and boom, you're Catholic, yeah.
Really?
Right out of the womb, pretty sure. Anyway, but you know, I get into a lot of discussions with folks at my church who are so conservative on issues where I'm going, but that's not what Jesus said to do, and that's not what the Bible said to do. He actually stood on the side of workers, you know, and that's gotten completely goofed up.
Well, I figured he hung out with a bunch of fishermen.
Yeah, but
so I kind of went that route for a while.
So now you're just starting to see, I think, a lot of people understand that, you know, the 99%, if you will, are all in this together, and that there's, you know, other factions at work that are looking to take everything away and eliminate the middle class. And so now people are saying, no, no, no. And even when unions first emerged, when their general strikes were happening back in the 30s and 40s, that only happened with the help of people who also were not in unions. It wasn't just unions.
Well, that's the only way. Do you think people got, you know, any sort of benefits or any sort of, I don't know, protections for people with handicaps or people of different races or people of different religions or anything else? It wasn't because they picked it. It's because everyone around them said, I want to live in a society that allows women to vote, that allows, you know, people of color to vote, to have a participation of every citizen. And I think it does take everybody, not just, I mean, shoot, if I had to wait for people just like me to get rights, you know, yikes, it wouldn't happen. Well, thanks for coming in. Is there a place people can go and look and see what's going on with the unions in Alaska, you know, online, where they can sort of keep up with the news? Because we're coming up to another legislative session, and you guys were on the block for a short time last year, and we'll see, where can people look? Well,
I mean, our website is, and we're actually revamping it, and I think we're going to be using it as a huge communication tool, but we've got APRN.org. And then we have a Facebook page, Alaska AFL-CIO, and I invite anybody to come like our page, whether they're in a union or not. And we are constantly talking about these issues that affect not just union members, but everyone in the state.
Well, I find
anybody who, you know, gets up every day and goes out there and earns a living.
Well, and, you know, thanks for the weekends. Thanks for 8-hour work days. Thanks for not having to go to work with kids. I really appreciate that. And I don't think people say thanks enough for all the work that unions have done. So thanks for being here. We're going to come back with more Up North on our panel.
So to pretend like we're continuing to talk, we pretend like we're still talking to each other as the cameras fade out.
Welcome back to More Up North. So glad you're joining us for our panel. And, you know, if you can get like 3 handsome white-haired men in Alaska together in one place and have a chat with them, why wouldn't you? Call it the Shannyn Moore Show. I served on the board of the Alaska Natural Gas Development Authority, otherwise known as ANGDA, and is now the chairman. Please welcome Scott Heyworth. And he's a senior fellow at the Institute of the North and author of The Wit and Wisdom of Wally Hickel, volumes 1 through 73. Please say hello to longtime Hickel aide, my friend Malcolm Roberts. And he's an APRN journalist, host of the Talk of Alaska, and legendary Alaska broadcaster, who's been in broadcasting for 50 years now. On Sundays, the Old Bull Rydell saddles up and spins classic American music for 3 hours on the must-hear radio program, The Truck Stop, which I adore. Please say hello to and welcome my good friend, Steve Heimel. Oh my. What shall we talk about? Okay, obviously, this week, the storm of the century. Supposedly the storm of the century. We don't have enough sea ice right now to actually buffer surges. Kivalina's falling in. Apparently Wales thinks that there's a potential this winter that the 1918 flu epidemic, that those mass graves are going to be unearthed. Which sounds like an X-Files episode, honestly, but I was hearing someone today on the radio, I know, it must be true, right, Steve? Who was saying, you know, this global warming, look at all this snow. We've got all this snow, it can't possibly be real. Steve, can you explain the difference between climate and weather and that actually places are falling into the ocean?
Actually, no.
What is...
But, you know, this storm is really going to, by the time it's tallied up, we'll know two things. First, that it was large, and, you know, damage accounts are just coming in now. I mean, you know, we found out yesterday that Sabunga was really ripped up, and you know, tell her there's some severe stuff that we haven't accumulated the reports of yet. And you know, as to its relationship with climate change, CO2, who knows?
Yeah, I don't think anytime soon that you think that people will put together, we're pulling all this stuff out, we're burning all this stuff, wow, it's getting hot, and then it's getting cold, and my Lord, we've had a hurricane in Alaska. Are they ever going to put that together? Is there something to put together?
I think this is an incredible moment, actually, to unite a lot of the sort of people of goodwill worldwide, because we have sort of two major
there's only
issues.
Like 7 of them.
Yeah, let's get them all together.
Let's get them all in one place.
Okay. Those who really care about the environment and those who want to help the people in poverty get elevated and come out of that. And I think it's all tied in with this understanding of this commons, if you will, how you care for the environment and care for the people as well. And we fought each other for so long, I think it's time to come together. And these climate issues are just examples of the environmental side, but it's both sides, I think, that we need to work on. I think it's a great opportunity.
Will you please, for the love of God, run for something?
Well, I did. I ran a couple of times and I almost got run out of the state. So
I remember that.
We've all done that. Shannyn, if I could, what I found interesting was that we hear about all the East Coast hurricanes, New York on that side of the Atlantic Ocean. This was a West Coast, West Alaska hurricane because it went right up through the Bering Sea. It didn't get knocked apart on the Dutch Harbor and all the rocks out there. So we had a hurricane-force storm. I don't know what the number was.
It was a Category 2.
Category 2 hurricane in Alaska, basically. So
with ice and snow and surge.
Yeah. I mean, the reality is, if there's more energy in the atmosphere, there's going to be more energy in the storms.
Right.
And there is more energy being held in to the atmosphere because it's heating up. That's more energy, period.
The sun's getting bigger.
The sun's getting bigger. Well, let's talk about this other concept for a minute. I've been hearing a lot of people like, well, the word environmentalist is like, there's really not anything worse you can call somebody in Alaska if you really want to hurt them. Like, oh, you're an environmentalist. And when did that happen? Because I thought people lived here because it's beautiful. And because it's like, it takes your breath away. I mean, I'm driving home today and the sun is setting at 4:30 and it was still beautiful to me, even though it was at 4:30. I'm thinking it'll be 4 o'clock next week. Driving here tonight, the moonrise over the Chugach, and I'm just like, oh my God, it's so, like, why is that, like, not okay?
Well, you know, Wally Hickel always considered himself an environmentalist, and I would say that he was, in his way.
Well, Earth Day was kind of
probably our most popular political figure. Malcolm may disagree with me. Jay Hammond always had an extremely strong environmental value, and they both believed in responsible development of the resources.
And they became great friends at the end of their lives. That's one of the things that was really wonderful for me. They both actually came together over the whole issue of BP's attempt to monopolize the North Slope by buying Arco Alaska. And suddenly these two guys who had fought for 20 years in politics, they said, hey, wait a minute, we both believe in Alaska first. We don't want a monopolized North Slope or pipeline. And they worked together. It was so great to see. And I think that's what I'd like to see Alaska do. You know, let's pull together for the things that we can make happen.
I think there's an idea that environmental groups are dominated by outside agitators, and it's a pretty easy button to push because every Alaskan is resentful of being, you know, held down by superior forces from outside, you know, whether it's fishing out of Seattle, Japan, Norway, or oil business out of Dallas, Fort Worth, and now Great Britain. You know, you get a little sick of this.
Yeah.
You get a little sick of this, you know, and so they think, well, these are outside agitators. They don't really understand Alaska. But there's always been a pretty vigorous, homegrown environmental movement here.
No, I think that that's true. We don't want to be bossed around by outside, but at the same time, you can point at environmentalists for being outsiders. So are the development companies, for the most part. The majority of them aren't homegrown, and there are homegrown groups that want to protect the environment here. I don't think that we have to, you know, stop all business to be environmental. And when there's a spill, I mean, I remember Prince William Sound, it was, nobody asked the fishermen, hey, who'd you vote for? You guys environmentalists? Oh, then we won't put the oil here. I mean, it just went everywhere. So it's just not that choosy. It happens to all of us. We've got to run to a quick break. We're going to be back with our panel on the other side. Break there, and Scott Heyworth had something he wanted to say regarding environmentalists and how awesome they are, right?
Right. Well, this is the part where the hostess thinks I'm sucking up to her, but I'm not. The most interesting thing I heard this week, and you brought it to my attention in your column, and we talked about it a few days ago, was this River Runs Wild river that's been decimated by pollution from the mines. And I mean, how many times I've watched that movie and how beautiful that is, and you're telling me, I guess you've seen it or know a lot about it. It's devastated for that many miles off an accidental spilling of a pond out of a copper mine or something? I mean, that's horrible.
The film A River Runs Through It was, you know, it was filmed in Montana.
Right.
And people really started fly fishing a lot because of that film. There was a copper leaching mine, and now there's, I think, 35 miles of that river that they're trying to reclaim and try to bring back where, you know, it's really difficult. And honestly, I mean, the response to that from the people of Montana, which you know is a liberal bastion, hippies everywhere. Actually, they're not. They're cowboys. But they looked at that and they were like, you know what? You want to have an open pit mine in our state? You're going to have to fill it in when you're done. You know what? You can't do this safely. No cyanide mining in this state at all. So they're done with that. But they figured it out the hard way. And I'm like, do we really have to go through what they did?
Well, 100 rivers there and 100 rivers there. Pretty soon you got a lot of hundreds of rivers on the planet Earth that are going under, and then other things. You know, I just don't know where it stops. I don't wonder where the balance is, and then throw in that a week ago we got 7 billion citizens on the planet, and that's growing. So how much energy do we have, and how much food are we going to have? So we've got some really interesting problems on the globe. Pollution's one of them. And how much poverty there is. And how much poverty.
Already.
Well, you know, I think that Alaska should be a leader in how to develop things right. I think just stopping production and still using these products is
hypocritical.
It really is.
I am not getting in an airplane with a solar panel. Ever.
I mean, the people say you shouldn't cut trees in Alaska, so we'll just buy it from Indonesia when they just rip out the forests, you know, with no environmental protection. I think that's BS. Yeah. I think we should do it right. And we should use our resources, but we should use them responsibly. And those who just want to sue to stop...
Do you think that's being done?
It is in the most part. That we have more environmental regulations, federal and state, than probably any other place in the world.
You know, I agree with you that we have a lot of regulation. They're not being enforced. That's the problem. I mean, who's watching to make sure, like, oh, check, you did that, and check, you did that. I mean, you look at Prince William Sound when the spill happened. I mean, here the Racus radar has been broken down for 2 years. By law, that was supposed to be on. You look at the fact that the barge with all of the spill response has been iced in for 2 years at dry dock. It's not even in the water ready to go with the crew at all times, which is the law. So
Plus, it didn't have a bulkhead in the middle of it, so they couldn't put the oil in it anyway,
Right.
because it would have just tipped over.
But it does now. Have you been there lately? Do you see the setup? I
okay,
mean, we have
what
the
do
most.
we have? But you're saying it does now. But at that point, and I went there and did a report for BBC year before last, and we walked across the beach there, and I'm like looking for a place to dig to look for oil, and I turn around and my footprints are full of oil sheen. 20 years after. I mean, oh, it's fixed now. Well, damn it. Why do we have to give up that much? How many people had to kill themselves, lose their jobs, lose their wives, lose their families, move out of here because, boy, we figured it out now. I mean, I'm not willing to do that again. I'm not willing to do that with Pebble. I'm not willing to do that with the Chukchi and Beaufort.
Well, I guess I disagree with you. I think we should do these projects if we can do them right. But if you just shut down these companies that want to do some of this development before they have a chance to really study it and prove they can do it right, you're not going to have any more major resource development in the state. And that's all right. Everyone has their own opinion. But I believe that we can be a model for the rest of the world, and that's what we should do. We should develop our resources responsibly and professionally.
And my point is that I don't think that I think in large part we have, but we've got Superfund sites here. You know, we've got places that haven't been developed properly, and we're looking at permitting and allowing companies that haven't been able to do it anywhere else effectively. I mean, I agree with you. I think Alaska should have its own mining company. I think it should have its own oil company, and I think we ought to be running the show because we're going to be the ones here to clean it up. And then maybe it happens. Oh, I'm sorry. Is that socialism? What am I going to get called
Shannyn,
now?
I hope you don't keep too many tapes on this because I'll end up being dead wrong, but I really think that, let's just take Shell. I mean, we beat up on them, but I got to believe they're making a good effort to try to do the right thing. Do I want to have the chance that they're not going to make it work? No, but they're putting a lot of time and money into it to make a rig that'll work in shallow depth Arctic ice. I have a problem trying to figure out how you separate the ice from the oil if something happens.
Really? Is that a problem? I think they
Well,
have a
I think
problem
it
with that
would be.
too.
Well, it happened in the Gulf. The ice melted.
Well, how about, I mean, that's a whole different thing. And this week, Barack Obama said, sure, they can drill the Arctic. And I was like, yeah, he's one hell of a socialist, that liberal. And the people that were really cheering for that probably aren't going to vote for him. But, you know, when you say, oh, I have a problem with the ice and the oil mixing, yeah. I say, get into ANWR. We figured out how to do that. Suck that mother dry and tell them to get the hell out in 10 years.
Amen.
It's got to be a
Amen.
smarter play
But
to
stay
do
out of the
directional
water.
drilling under ANWR if you're going to do anything. Stay out of the water. I
Stay
agree.
out of the water. Get it? Okay, Steve, you go.
Go, Steve. Now
You're
take us
laughing
both.
at me.
I think
All of us.
I think that's completely insane. I think what should be happening now is we really should be pushing for selling our gas. We should be pushing for cracking down on the East Coast coal burning plants. So instead of burning coal and ripping the whole state of West Virginia apart, and instead of fracking until there's earthquakes all over the United States, we should be selling our natural gas, and the price would go up, and that's our real route to development. That's what I think. I mean, I can't believe Alaska is not advocating for cracking down on coal burning, because we've got the gas.
Because
That's
we-
your transition
But we
fuel.
can't-
But the reason
are
is
the
because we've
greenhouse
got the
prices.
coal.
Huh?
Because they want to sell the coal too. I mean, that's
Yeah.
why they're not cracking down on it.
Well, no, they're not cracking down because they're kind of corrupt, and you know it's gone on since the Bush administration. EPA knew they just didn't do anything about it when they broke the law. All those power plants. If you don't see those power plants down in the Ohio Valley, it will break your heart. It will break your heart. The pollution coming out of them right now.
Well, we've got to run to a break, but I think you have a point. And when it comes to the EPA and feeling really very confident about their ability to regulate, when you see people who are in a position and in a position to be monitoring development in this country. You see that one of them got pregnant from an Exxon exec, literally. I just don't feel safe with that. So we're going to run to a quick break. We'll be back and with questions.